At the age of 10, I announced at the Thanksgiving dinner table that I was going to kill myself one day.
I didn't believe that anybody would care if I was gone. I didn't think anybody would even notice.
I remember thinking that my kids would be better off if I wasn't here.
I think I just kind of wanted all of the voices in my head to go away.
I was angry and depressed.
Total darkness.
I just felt desperate.
You should just be dead.
You're by yourself.
I was alone.
Nobody loves
It
you.
came crashing down on me.
My name is Hariharan. My matrix number is A171967. Okay. Imagine this. Unable to cope with the overwhelming stress you are under, you attempt to end your own life by hanging yourself from the ceiling at your home, but somehow fail. In the months following your failed attempts, you are investigated for committing a criminal offense and subsequently sentenced to 6 months in jail for your action. With your desperate cry for help, met with court orders and imprisonment, you begin to wonder if dying would have been a better outcome. This is what happened to a 38-year-old disabled Malaysian Muhammad Sani Isa. Criminalization of suicide, however, does not save life. Research has shown that countries which criminalize suicide do not differ in the suicide rate compared to the countries where the act has been decriminalized. In other words, punishing those who attempt suicide does not help to reduce the number of suicide in the country. If anything, criminalizing suicide would only push individuals to choose more violent and irreversible means of harming themselves to ensure that their attempt is successful to avoid persecution if they survived. When 24-year-old Malaysian Yu Kasim attempted to commit suicide 3 years ago, after failing to cope with the immense pressure of having to care for her cancer patient mother while being unemployed, she was fined RM2,000 by the court for her action. Instead of receiving the financial and psychological support she so desperately needed, the already indigent woman was forced to pay a hefty fine. How could this possibly deter her or others from attempting to commit the offense again in the future? As a psychologist, I will study human behavior, investigating the process related to how people think and feel. I conduct research and provide therapy and counseling to reduce distress and to help people manage psychological problems. I will help people to deal with relationship problems, trauma, eating disorder, learning difficulties, substance abuse, parenting issues, loss and grief, and managing the effects of chronic illness. Psychologists like me practices different types of therapy for the suicide victims, such as psychoanalysis, psychodynamic approaches, client-centered approaches, cognitive behavioral therapy, and many more. What the victim needs is help, not punishment. We can help save many suicide victims by the help of the psychologist, whereas criminalizing them will only make it even worse, which is why we should decriminalize suicide attempts.
Believe or not, attempting suicide is considered as criminal offence under Section 309 of the Penal Code. In my opinion, 309 of the Penal Code lack humanity compared to 342 of the Criminal Procedure Code. 309 of the Penal Code states who attempts suicide can be punished with a jail sentence, fine, or both, while 342 of the Criminal Procedure Code allows magistrate to order the charged person to be assessed for a period of 1 month. This issue is very controversial among Malaysians because Malaysia still remains as one of few countries that still apply this law. As we know, it is 2021 with the current situation of global pandemic, social distancing and the initial number of depressed people and suicide attempts, Section 309 should be repealed. Many people are questioning why we can decriminalize homicide with mental health but can't decriminalize suicide. They also recommend that Parliament move fast to decriminalize suicide attempt in order to provide those that are struggling with mental health with a better support system. Decriminalizing suicide is an important step in breaking down the stigma, ensuring a society where we are able to ask for help without fear of punishment and prosecution. Besides, 309 of the Penal Code in the criminal jurisdiction would push individuals to be more aggressive to ensure their attempts is successful in order to avoid prosecution. Furthermore, prosecuting those who attempt suicide would incur more costs for the government. Instead, the cost can be distributed to develop a better health and social care regarding mental health. In conclusion, Section 309 should be repealed because suicide attempts is a sign of mental illness, and mentally ill people should get treated at hospital or consult with a psychiatrist, not being locked in prison or prosecuted.
Criminalization of suicide attempt does not save lives. It is because punishing those who attempt suicide does not help to reduce the number of suicides in the country. Criminalizing suicide will only push individuals to choose more violent and reversible means of harming themselves to ensure that their attempt is successful to avoid prosecution. Criminalization of suicide will only deter them from seeking treatment while increasing the risk of suicide rather than reducing it. With the knowledge that they may be prosecuted or fined if they fail, those with suicidal tendencies will go to extreme measures to ascertain that it does not happen. As an example, instead of taking 12 pills of Panadol, they will take 50 pills. Instead of drinking half a bottle of Clorox, they will drink 1 bottle. Individuals suffering with suicide ideation are experiencing a legitimate mental health issue that deserves the dignity of treatment, which we can provide. Instead of sending people to jail or fining them, we have an effective framework that is empathetic and care-based in place instead. Moreover, if an individual is admitted into medical care for a suicide attempt, they are kept under close supervision until they are deemed to be in a stable condition to not harm themselves. As a conclusion, criminalizing suicide will not deter suicides from happening, but instead push people to the extremes in fear of prosecution. They should be admitted to any medical care where they will be kept under close supervision and their safety will be guaranteed. Soon, they will realize how precious their life is.
My name is Noradilla Idayu binti Ariff and I am 22 years old. I think that suicide attempt should be decriminalized because suicide attempt can happen to anyone who has depression. Depression is a common and a serious medical illness that negatively affects how we feel, the way we think, and how we act. Depression is a feeling like a drowning. No matter how hard you try to fight back, there's nothing you can do about it. I started to feel depressed 2 years ago when my parents got divorced. I always had this feeling that something terrible will happen, and that represents itself and tightness in my chest. I always feel tired and not feeling rested because I'm having difficulty sleeping at night. At first, I thought it was a normal lifestyle that everyone living with, but it turns out that I am having a serious depression until I started having a suicidal ideation. So I told my friend about it, but I was being ignored by them. Until now, I am afraid that nobody will listen to me if I open up my story, so I just keep it all inside. I see myself as a useless creature and felt unwanted by everyone at that time. I also felt overwhelmed by painful emotions and see death as the only way out. A depression sufferer like me should be treated instead of being punished. It is not my fault, neither my decision to be depressed, because I never asked to be in this kind of situation. Without we all realize, those people who ignore those who are depressed actually are the criminals, not the depression sufferer. I just want people to pay more attention to me by listening to my story and showing they care about me. So for those depression sufferers out there, it's okay to be afraid, but I don't want you to give up. We all can fight this depression and make it possible.